this repeat. Thank you very much for being interested enough to come to this repeat of our Inner Circle. After working very hard to try to restore the copy of what we did, it is getting late in the day, and so what I'm going to simply do is make it again. And this will be as close as possible to what we did before. I have, of course, the same material, and I will answer the same questions. So I'm wearing something different. The last half of this, we do have a restoration of it, and you will get it. But I'm simply going to record the first part again so that the people who couldn't make it to the meeting get to still get what we promised them. I will do this in smaller parts so that it's easy for Shannon to put them up, and it will be easy for you to watch them in parts. We're learning, folks, how to do this. The first question that I had, and I want to cover that right away, was, is Ben Bernanke actually right that there isn't any inflation and that he's going to catch it perfectly and that it's okay? Ben Bernanke's got a problem. He's got this dual mandate that wasn't created by him. It was created during the, around the late 70s. And it requires him to not only be paying attention to the value of the dollar and not letting inflation run away, which is really what the central bank's job is, but in addition to that, he's got another mandate, which is full employment. In many cases, those two mandates are mutually exclusive. They can't both be done at the same time. So the problem is, there's nothing Ben Bernanke can do about a lot of the unemployment that we have in the United States. I realize that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. His tools that he has are lowering and raising interest rates to manipulate the economy via money in the banking system. I know he wants to do his best for that, but that's not why people are unemployed. They're unemployed because, actually, the people who are doing things that make people money and that people need aren't really unemployed at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a picture of unemployment. First of all, I'm going to show you the picture that they see in Washington and that people see everywhere, and that is how slowly our economy has recovered this time, employment-wise, compared to other recessions, previous ones. The second picture I'm going to show you right now is the insight that will help you understand what's really going on here. Like inflation, like all the things they count, they try to average things together, and they, meaning Washington, authorities, people trying to regulate and manipulate this giant economy, they don't have the smarts to actually do it, is the problem. It was designed to develop itself and let millions of people vote with their dollars. It was not designed to have one or a few guys trying to regulate it and decide what should go up and what should go down. It doesn't really work that way. The free market actually seems to turn out to work better. But we have trouble trusting it, or at least the guys in Washington have trouble trusting it to work. So back to Bernanke. What's happening with the unemployment, as you can see from the picture that I'm showing you now, it isn't really unemployment. It is that people who have partial educations, haven't made it through high school, have extremely high rate of unemployment. And then people who finished high school have a lower rate of unemployment. People who have some college, even lower. People with college degrees have about 4% unemployment. It doesn't show you on this chart, but actually people with MBAs have about 2% unemployment, and you can't even find any to work for you. In fact, 2% is way less than the rate of unemployment that would be, just because people sometimes move from one place to another. So there's virtually zero unemployment against people who have MBAs. In addition to that, there is virtually no unemployment among people who make other people money, like successful salespeople or money managers who actually have positive results. There's an enormous amount of problem among money managers who have negative results. So you can see what's really going on. When you try to blend all of them together and you think that you're going to solve it by providing more cash via interest rates and via the banking system, all that happens is when you make the money too cheap, lower than the rate of inflation, and you lend money out lower for cheaper than the rate of growth of the economy, you cause assets, you cause resources to be misallocated. You cause people to take that money and do things that they're being pushed to do. Like the people who were pushed to go and buy houses because the money for buying houses was being given away indiscriminately and almost free. And we trained people that everybody deserved a house, and that the price of houses was going to continue to rise, so nobody had to even be careful who they lent the money to. It was became believed that the constitutional right of every American was to have a house, and we could afford it because the prices just go up forever. They never go down. And so what happened? An African-American family who used to have a net worth of about $12,000 compared to about $130,000 for a white family on the average, they believed that houses were great and that they should mortgage themselves to the hilt to buy these houses. And so, of course, the government felt that its job was to make sure everybody could get a house and to lend them the money whether they could afford to borrow it or not, and whether they could afford to pay for it or not. When real estate, as it would inevitably do, stopped appreciating in value, the people who were upside down weren't able to or didn't want to continue paying. The whole thing collapsed, and those African American families now have a $2,200 average net worth compared to about $90,000 for the white people, for the everyone else, Caucasian Americans. And so what happened? The Caucasian Americans are not pleased that their net worth went from $130,000 on average down to $90,000, but the African Americans who had a $12,000 net worth and now have a $2,000 net worth used to have about 10% of the net worth of everyone else, and in fact now they have about 1/40th, 1/50th. They feel that they've lost ground. It's because they had so much money wrapped up in houses and their equity was completely used up. They used to have some equity. They probably put down a couple of $1,000s, and now that's gone. We laugh at Citigroup and those guys for borrowing bonds with 3% down. How silly that was and how irresponsible, but we don't think about how we all believed that that was exactly the right thing to let everyone do in real estate. So none of that is going to be solved by lowering interest rates and pumping money into the economy, no matter how much they do it. And what's happening now with the free money that Ben Bernanke and the Fed are giving away and injecting into the banking system is people aren't really using it to go hire people to do things they don't really want people to do. What they're doing is they're using that money to become more productive, to buy better equipment so that even more work can be done by one guy, and so they need even fewer workers, and computer systems so we get more efficient, and to go and build factories in other places where there's cheap labor so they can hire fewer workers. There's the unintended consequence of pumping all of that money into the economy to try to force. Is there really inflation, or is he right that there's no inflation? Again, by generalizing, you get the wrong answer. The equivalent of this discussion is a doctor who has one 400-pound patient who's going to die any minute of a heart attack, and a 100-pound patient who's starving to death, and then he averages them together at 225 pounds and tries to treat two 225-pound guys, and of course he kills both patients through not accurately understanding what's going on. I showed you the wrong answer that we're getting about unemployment, and as far as inflation is concerned, the things we want are going up in price very rapidly. Those are food and education and medical care, transportation. The things we don't want and don't care about are actually going down in price, such as people to do labor when we can get somebody else to do it cheaper. That's one thing that's going down in price. And then we skew the whole thing. We've built enough houses, but we had a rapidly expanding group of baby boomers who were buying more and more and more real estate and boats and shopping centers and office buildings, and that group has stopped wanting to buy more of those things, but the next group that follows us are half the size. We built enough houses and strip centers and office buildings and boats. We don't need any more. The price of those things is not accelerating. There are enough of them. And so, excuse me, if you count a huge amount of the economy as being the construction business, which is as much as 20% of it, and if you add in existing real estate, it's even larger. If you count the cost of having a place to live, renting house, the price is going down. When you put that into the rest of the inflation, you end up with a number where you average it together and it says you have no inflation. In fact, the things that we want to buy and that we need and that are scarce are going up rather rapidly because we've printed $13 trillion, and everybody around the world has printed a lot of paper money. A friend of mine, Frank Beck, wrote in Barron's a couple of years ago what he thought was a joke. He said, why don't all the countries get together and just print money like crazy, because the problem is too much debt. So let's all print money like crazy, but all the countries will do it. Nobody's currency will be visibly going down, and it'll just be easier to pay everybody back, because in reality, all of them will have the same inflation. Nobody will notice, but it'll be easy to pay back all the debt because all the paper money will have become so much less valuable. He was kidding, he thought, but that's exactly what's going on right now. Yes, there are going to be problems with inflation, but here's why you're not seeing it right now. We said this a couple of years ago. When you start with the deflation and almost in depression, and you have that improve, on your way to runaway inflation, you're going to pass through a period where there is perfect amount of inflation. You know, you want some inflation, a little bit, because you have expanding population. You need to have a little bit expanding money supply. You have to do that in order to have an economy that can grow. But running through the zero and the worrisome deflation, through where we are now on our way to problematic inflation, you go through this period that's perfect and feels good, and it's very much like an alcoholic who goes to a party, and at his first drink he's behaving perfectly and he feels great. And it looks like there's no problem. He has to pass through that point until he gets to the part, because he doesn't know how to stop, and so he will eventually get to the point where it is a problem. Right now, it looks great. Perfect analogy to what we're going through right now.